I have quite a number of examples here. I'm just going to quickly move on and just say that as an occupying power in the West Bank, Israel is obligated to maintain public order and ensure the safety of Palestinians in the West Bank. And this has been ruled upon again and again in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has ruled again and again that the Israeli army has to protect Palestinian property. As we can see, the result of that isn't, it's not what's happening. As I said earlier, the political system here takes it in its stride, that there are thousands of people on the street shouting death to Arabs and death to leftists, and things that were not so legitimate in the past have now become legitimate, and that's what's so incredibly scary. Now, moving on, because that's just a photo from one of the demonstrations in Tel Aviv that happened over the summer, that these right-wingers attacking the protesters. This is a photo that I took from, for those of you who know Jerusalem, it's from Paris Square, where women in black hold their vigil every Friday. So for the last 38 odd years, women in black have held an hour vigil at Paris Square in Jerusalem. This is in West Jerusalem. It's a 1 hour silent protest, and they just stand there with signs. It says here in Hebrew, Dai Kibush, end the occupation. They stand with signs in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. Now, the average age of these women is about 65, 70. You know, they're grandmothers, they're retired, they're lovely, lovely women. And during the summer, they were screamed at for being whores and Arab fuckers and bitches. And these are grandmothers. These are an older generation which, no matter if you disagree with them, I mean, that level of respect has just been lost in Israel. It's incredibly disturbing. Incredibly disturbing. They were pelted, they were attacked, they were chased down the street. Their cars' tyres were slashed during the summer. There's a couple of experiences that I want to talk about. I'm really watching the time, and I really want to get sort of more about the military and how Israel's exporting the occupation. Just to say, Anatos, I'm going to leave Jerusalem because that's the video that's got translation in it. And that video sort of explained what happened then. Now, about preventing protests, this is a great one. So, at 2012, I think it was, I'm sleeping in bed, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I get a knock at the door, and my housemate says, "Ruth, the police are here." I'm like, okay. Now I hope there's no police officers in the room, but I had a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of marijuana in my bedroom, and I was panicking because I thought, oh God, this is about that. And I started trying to shove it in the bin and find places to hide it and crapping myself. Go to the door, open the door, there are 2 plain-clothed police officers there with a camera in my face, and they hand me 4 maps of 4 West Bank villages, and I have to say I did relax at that point. So I was like, okay, it's about activism, that's all right. Thank God for you. Like, bring it on. Yeah, go on, what do you want? And they said, well, these 4 villages are now closed military zones every Friday for the next 6 months, from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening, and if we find you there, we will arrest you. They then put down, they gave me these bits of paper, and then they start chatting to me. I'm like, what are you doing? Get out, show them where to go. I then get a phone call from my mother. My mother never calls me at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I knew exactly what happened. I said, Mum, have the police been to your house? She said, yes. They were looking for you. Me, oh sorry Mum. And they'd also given my mum, 6:30 in the morning they came to her house, camera in her face, and gave her the 4 maps and told her, tell your daughter she can't go to these villages. They came to 14 activists' homes. Now, just prior to this happening, about maybe 3 months earlier, there were 3 settlers from the West Bank who'd been given banning orders from the West Bank because of the price tag attacks that they'd carried out. So that's it, they were banned from the West Bank. Now, the only newspaper that reported on the policeman coming to our house was a Ruth Sheva, which is Channel 7. It's the English settler newspaper online. They were the only ones who reported about it. And it became quite clear that the only reason that they'd done this is to sort of balance the scales. You know, they banned these 3 settlers from the West Bank, so there was pressure on them to do exactly the same thing to us. And it was lip service. Our names weren't written on these documents. They couldn't ban me personally as Ruth Edmonds from going to these. They were very general orders. I mean, legally they wouldn't have stood in court for a second. But it just goes to show what they're trying to do to sort of prevent solidarity activists from standing in solidarity with Palestinians. Okay, so where now? I'm not even going to talk about this. If you want me to talk about where we're heading next, then fine. I'm honest, I have no idea. I don't think anyone can really say. First of all, we're just before elections. We've got elections on the 17th of March, and it's so difficult to say who's going to be voted in. What I can do is give you the possible outcomes that could happen. So these are the possible things that we could see happening. Again, you know, let's say we get sort of a leftist government, Tzipi Livni and Herzog. They've said, I know, oh God, yeah. Well, that's the thing in Israel. We've all taken a shift to the right. So even the left have taken a shift. So we don't really have a left in Israel anymore. There isn't really a left. There's sort of centre and then right and then more right and then really, really, really right wing. Like that's basically what it is. But I have a policy. As an anarchist, I find voting really tricky because ultimately, there's a great anarchist saying, "Whoever you vote for, the government always gets in." Classic. But what I do, I find that in Israel, I can't not vote because there are so many people who live under my government's control who don't have the right to vote, and I kind of feel like I should vote, but I vote tactically. And I also ask every single Palestinian I meet, who do you want me to vote for? I get so many different answers. I've been told Tzipi, vote for Tzipi. I'm like, why? And he said because she's more dangerous than Bennett. So, you know, I'll start making notes of all this, and then whoever gets the most, that's who I'll go vote for. So, moving on from that. Just to say really quickly, the occupation. What is the image? A cutting edge in fighting terrorism and counterinsurgency in wars that span the military and domestic security. What it is, in fact, is a laboratory. This aspect is very important to understand. The West Bank is Israel's testing ground. Now look, many countries in the world, probably, I don't want to say all of them, but most of them have some sort of military industry going on, right? In the UK as well, there is a military industry here. It's not unusual. Israel isn't the only one to have a military industry. What's the difference, though? Is that Israel has a testing ground. Israel has a civilian population on which upon it can test its weapons. The UK doesn't have that. The US doesn't have that. And countries abroad love to get weapons that have been battle tested. And so when your taxpayers' money goes to buy weapons from Israel, those are weapons that have been tested on a civilian population. How many of you have seen The Lab? You have to go and see this film. Go download it, show it at one of your meetings. It is a fantastic documentary that talks all about this. The one thing that he discovered there is that the main product that Israel exports is experience. And countries from abroad, they're not really interested in the engineering or the Israeli product itself, but what they're interested in is the testing, is the experience. Everyone wants the latest missile that was shot in the last Gaza operation, or the last rifle that was used in the latest West Bank incursion. That's what they want, the experience. You know that the arms compromises 20% of Israel's exports. Pretty large number. And there are 150,000 families, not individuals, families, who rely, who are dependent upon this industry. So, I'm going to come back to ICAHD in a second, because I'm just going to read to you, and this is from, this sort of brings in sort of the aspect of international law. this is the bit where I'm going to pause. Give me 1 second. Okay, so just as Israel exports the occupation through its weaponry and tactics of suppression to such willing customers as the US and European militaries, security agencies and police forces, so too does it export its legal expertise in manipulating international human rights law and the effective PR or hasbara techniques. So Gaza itself represents little more than a testing ground for these varied instruments of suppression. And it is the globalization of Gaza that is a key Israeli export. Now, exports, however, need local agents to package the product and create a market for it in the local economy. And so, how many of you heard of B'nai B'rith? B'nai B'rith in the United States. So they've now got something which is called the Lawfare Project, which is under the slogan of protecting against the politicization of human rights, whose main strategy is to enlist prominent legal experts to delegitimize attempts to hold Israel accountable for its violation of crimes, violation and crimes under international human rights law. Now, what is clear is the military operations had a purpose of their own, that they would have been launched regardless, and that they were simply waiting on a pretext. They had to come because there was a vacuum left when after the failure of the John Kerry peace initiative, and a closure was necessary. And it was clear that the Palestinian Authority, which had several months to take an initiative that would have bolstered the Palestinians' position, would not do so. So even though Martin Indyk, the Americans' chief negotiator and former AIPAC leader, placed the blame squarely on Israel for the talks' failure. In fact, the end of the Kerry initiative marked the culmination of a decades-old campaign, systematic and deliberate, of eliminating the two-state solution. Operation Brother's Keeper and Protective Edge and the latest operation in Gaza represent the imposition of a regime of warehousing, the outright imprisonment of entire people. The message is clear, unilateral and final. And this is the message. This country has been Judaized. It is now the land of Israel, in the process of being incorporated into the state of Israel. You, Arabs or Palestinians, as you call yourselves, are not a people and have no national rights, certainly to our exclusively Jewish country. You are not a side to a conflict. And once and for all, we must disabuse you of the notion that we are actually negotiating with you. We never have and never will. You are nothing but inmates in a prison cells. And we hereby declare through our military and political actions that you have 3 options before you. 1, you can submit, as inmates are required to you, in which case we will allow you to remain in your enclaves, or you can leave, as hundreds of thousands of you have done before, or if you choose to resist, you will die. This move to the right in both Israeli politics and civil society shows us that pressure is having an effect, that there is a desperateness. Now, I'm just going to go back and read you a quote. So, Operation Protective Edge wasn't merely a military assault on a primarily civilian population. Together with Cast-Led in 2008, 2009 and Pillar of Defense in 2012, it's also part of an ongoing assault on international humanitarian law by a highly coordinated team of Israeli lawyers, military officers, PR people and politicians, led by no less a philosopher of ethics. And it is an effort not only to get Israel off the hook for massive violations of human rights and international law, but to help other governments overcome similar constraints when they embark as well on asymmetrical warfare, counterinsurgency and counter-terrorism against people who are resisting domination. And this is a campaign that Israel calls lawfare. And now I'm just going to read to you this quote. This is from an Israeli expert in international law who chose to remain anonymous, and he describes a very cynical manipulation of the law. And this is what he says. International law is the language of the world, and it's more or less the yardstick by which we measure ourselves today. It's the lingua franca of international organisations. So you have to play the game if you want to be a member of the world community. And the game works like this. As long as you claim you are working within international law, and you can come up with a reasonable argument as to why what you are doing is within the context of international law, you're fine. That's how it goes. This is a very cynical view of how the world works. So even if you're being inventive, or even if you're being a bit radical, as long as you can explain it in that context, most countries will not say that you're a war criminal. And I'm just going to go now and talk very briefly about ICAHD. And what are we doing about this in Israel? What are we doing about this? So first of all, we have an analysis. ICAHD is a political organisation. We have an agenda, we have an analysis, and it's this analysis that we constantly try to put out to our partners in the international community. We have ECOSOC status in the United Nations, which means that we can directly lobby within the UN through both the offices in Geneva, so our UK office is the one that does a lot of the work in Geneva, and in the US we have a New York office and they do work in New York. We also take tours, groups out who come to Jerusalem, to the West Bank, and there's a couple of people here who've been on one of my tours. And you are, yes, been on my tour with Zaytun. Was it last year?
Year before.
Year before last, yeah. So many groups who come out for tours. One of the main aspects, of course, that we focus on is house demolitions, this issue of house demolitions. So we were part of a legal case together with Rabbis for Human Rights going back to Oslo. There is a law, well, it's agreed upon in Oslo, that planning and development in Area C should be handed over at some point to the Palestinians. Of course, this has never happened. So there's a Supreme Court court case that we're working on to the chance of it happening. I mean, what the state basically said, the Supreme Court said to the state, you have 90 days to show how you are involving Palestinians in the planning and development process, and then Gaza happened. Everything got put on the back burner as soon as that happened. So one of the things that we do in terms of direct action is we rebuild Palestinian homes. To date, we've rebuilt 187 Palestinian homes. We were going to have a summer camp last summer where we rebuild a demolished home, but because of the situation, it was cancelled. So we're having a summer camp this year. The house that we promised to rebuild last summer, we will be rebuilt this spring. And sort of that's ICAHD really in a nutshell. And I'm just going to put up this last slide, which is a little bit about events with our ICAHD UK office. There's also a poster up here, and there's some flyers over there. There's a few flyers, one on house demolitions, and some more stuff on here in actions. And then there's this flyer here, which is Experience Travel Tours, and this is a study tour that's in November. I think it's in November. A study tour sometime this year, and you'll meet Jeff Halper or myself during that study tour. And we also have the summer camp where we rebuild a demolished home. Now, ICAHD is an organisation that's been established since 1997, so it's quite a long time, and we really rely on grassroots funding and support to continue. And there is, I believe, a collection bowl here. So if you do want to support our work, and if you can give something to support our work, that would be amazing. We also have a piece of paper here that you can sign up to and receive. We send out 4 emails a year. That's it. And in those 4 emails, it's not a lot. I'm not going to bombard you with them. And in those emails, you'll get analysis from Jeff, up-to-date information on the situation on the ground. And I would say, if you want to come and visit us, please do. I think coming to see the situation for yourself with your own eyes is so impactful, and it just means that it will bolster the work that you're already doing here in the UK. And so I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for coming to hear me speak and ramble on for the last hour, and I believe we'll have time for questions. So thank you very much.
thank you very much, Ruth. It was a very, very informative talk, as I expected it would be. As Ruth said, we are going to have time for questions, probably about 25 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. So I'll try and take it in threes.
Do you want to do your announcements before the questions? Or
we could do, yeah.
Just in case people have to go, at least then they've heard.
Right, I'll put my glasses on. Right. I'm actually going to do the first couple of announcements and then I'll pass around to a few other people. One thing I did want to say, which I say in every meeting, is for beginners, because not everyone is going to be an expert. This booklet by Palestine Solidarity Campaign, which is only £3, is an excellent introduction to the history of Palestine and the current situation. Oh, it's £2, sorry, it's £2. So we've got a few copies here. It's really, really good to get you started, and then you can move on to, there's hundreds and hundreds of books out there to read.
I think we're giving them away free now.
Oh, even better. So it's gone from £3 to £2 to nothing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That £3 put in the pot. I'm joking.
It's a good thing to do.
As you know, we have monthly meetings, and on each chair, most of the chairs, there might be a few people who haven't had this. Next month we're having a general election hustings, which will be in this room. We invited all the major parties and some of the minor parties too to come along and talk about how they're going to support Palestine. It's based on a national PSC initiative, which I got the little logo from, called Vote for Palestine. If you haven't already, please go to the national PSC website and email the constituency people in your area to find out how they feel about Palestine. And finally, before I pass on to other people, at the bottom there is our website, our local Manchester website, and there's a little window on the website where you can sign up for our emails. And we also have a Facebook group, which for security reasons is a closed group. You can apply to join it and go onto Facebook and look up Palestine Solidarity Campaign Manchester. And we're also on Twitter. And then I'm going to do these in the order that I've got them written down. So the first one is Norma with Stop G from Arrest. You've left leaflets in on them.
Oh no,
Just people have know about the ongoing Stop G4S campaign. You've all got these leaflets, and on it gives you the Manchester Council website, e-petition, and you can all go on that, we've decided. So wherever you're from, go on the website, vote, and if you live in Manchester, you tick live, but if you don't live in Manchester, you can tick work or study or other. So tick other if you're other. But so everybody can go on the e-petition website, and we really need people to do that. So encourage, and if you've got a house full of people, they can all vote, all the kids can vote, the unborn babies can vote. Get on the website and vote. And if you live in Manchester, we've also got the petition here, paper petition that you can sign. So we very much need that. On Saturday at 11 o'clock, if anybody can come, in Withington, outside the library, on Wilmslow Road, we're doing petitioning and leafleting about this issue. So that's, is there anything else we need to say?
No, can I just pass this round? And if you are in Manchester, put your Manchester postcode down the side of that. If you're not in Manchester, then go on the website, as Norma said. Is that right if I pass that round?
And there's lots of different opportunities to lobby about this and do petitions. So we'll keep you informed about that, if people can get informed.
Okay, the next one on my list is Owen.
Well, Ruth started off her wonderful talk, and she mentioned the idea of recreation without guilt. So I'm here to advertise recreation without guilt. This is a 9-day cycle ride from Edinburgh to London to raise awareness of the Palestinian situation and to raise funds for Mecca. It's for cyclists and non-cyclists, i.e. you can do a 1-day, 2-day, or anybody in the room wants to do 9 days, you're very welcome to come for the whole 9 days. But we do need stewards, and we need people who, when we arrive into each city and town, people who are willing to hand out leaflets and talk to the general public. So there's opportunities to volunteer, to be stewards, and to cycle for 1 day, 2 days, or 9. And if anybody's interested, I've got some little leaflets with me which I can hand out at the end if anybody wants to find out more about it. Thanks, Chloe.
Okay, we've got 2 more and then we'll get on to questions. The next one's the Tom Handel lecture. Who's speaking on that?
Yeah, the Tom Handel lecture is every year. Tom Handel was a student at MMU who was murdered by the IDF in 2004. We've had this lecture which has some really great speakers every year, and this year is Rania Masri from the American University of Beirut. There will be a PSC stall there, and we always have a good turnout, and we'd love to see you there to support it. Thanks. It's next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. There's leaflets on your chairs, but if you don't have a leaflet, then we've got some more here. All right? So.
Okay, and finally...
It's MMU, isn't it?
It's MMU in John Dawson building.
John Dawson.
And finally, Linda.
Okay. I did announce a couple of meetings back that the famous Freedom Theatre from Jenin was going to be doing a tour here, and I've had contact from them. What they're wanting, they've sent a list of dates, and for us here, they're going to be performing at the Lowry in Salford. And they're going to be here from the 9th to the 15th of May, so it's 6 nights. And what they're looking for, they haven't said how many people it's for so far, but what they're looking for is accommodation. So if anybody can give accommodation to some of these young actors, or their support producers, whatever they bring with them, that would be great. If you can't do the full 6 days, if you can do 2 days and then we can move them on to somewhere else, that's what they're asking for. Obviously, because the cost of bringing a theatre group here is going to be tremendous, especially coming from somewhere like Jenin. They're going to be in London, they're going to be in Birmingham, they're going to be in Nottingham. I mean, I've seen them perform in Jenin and they are well worth seeing. And the Lowry has stated that they're having them in a way to redress the balance from when they had Bathsheba, because I think they learnt a lesson from all the activities we did around Bathsheba. And in addition, of course, if people can give accommodation, the important thing will be to go and see them, to get tickets and go and see them, maybe even take off flags, whatever, to show them that they've got friends here and they're being supported. So if anybody thinks that they can offer any accommodation at all, if you want to come and see me and just I'll write your address or phone number down or whatever, and as I get more information from them, I'll be in touch with you.
Can you say the dates again?
Yes, it's from the 9th to the 15th of May.
Okay, and then are there any other announcements from the floor, or should we just move straight to questions? So, if anyone has any questions you want to...
Yeah, I just also wanted to say, if anyone wants to ask any personal questions as well, please feel free. Nothing is taboo in my eyes, so if you want to ask me anything personal, difficult personal questions as well, feel free.
Okay, so anybody want to ask a question?